Today is Sunday, July 30th, 2023, and I'm going to read 1 Kings chapter 19. I've been doing daily videos going over this, so I'm just going to get into this video. In the previous video, Elijah has just slain hundreds of prophets of idols, Baal and Jezebel, and so that's where we're left off. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. So Jezebel's threatening him, saying that let the gods do to me, and more also, if I don't retaliate equally to how you just killed Jezebel's own prophets. And what comes to me is just how a lot of times things like this, in my opinion, I want more details. How exactly do you go about rounding up 400 and something prophets and then cutting them, killing them with the sword, chopping their heads off? I don't know. Did Elijah do it himself? Oftentimes it seems like masses of people, like, you know, the meme of people getting their pitchforks. So often it seems like the crowd is just quickly swayed by, I mean, Elijah just did this grand display. God's fire came down and lit an altar on fire. So things were happening that would sway huge groups of people to just follow a cause instantaneously. So my mind just goes to, oh man, I want to know the details. How do you just wrangle up 400? I mean, they were all gathered together at the time. So it just seems like really the masses help facilitate things like, oh yeah, and Elijah slew 450 prophets of Baal. And I just wonder what the details are. Anyways. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. Just parts of the Bible like this strike me as so interesting, and somebody and their servant going to a town and telling your servant, all right, I'm heading off into the wilderness. The details like the juniper tree. So poetic. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God. So 40, very significant here. Jesus also fasts for 40 days. As far as I can tell, he fasted for 40 days, and the meat that he ate, the cake, and notice that meat was not a term reserved only for the flesh of animals. It just meant stuff that sustains you. Food, oftentimes. The cake here was being called meat. So that the cake sustained him for 40 days. That's the way that I'm interpreting that. So 40 being very, very significant, and Jesus repeats a similar fasting for 40 days in the desert. And he came thither unto a cave, and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. How many of us have felt exactly like Elijah in this instance, where this is the sentiment where you feel like you're the only one in the world that cares about the most important thing, about the truth. Feels like you're surrounded by people who are plugged into the matrix, and they only care about superficial things, and they believe all the deception, and it can easily feel like, God, just kill me, because this battle is too big for me, and what am I doing here? I'm constantly encompassed by enemies, and see nothing but idolatry in the land. And anyways, these are just some sentiments that I think a lot of people can agree with, or, they've felt similar before. And he said, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice." The still small voice here really sticks out to me as being very interesting. And I guess another thing too is how I kind of connect with, could you imagine being this close to God? Like, angels are being sent down to you and you're still just like, God, just kill me. Just end it. That's how I honestly feel in these end times. It's like we can witness in our lifetime amazing things, like the fulfillment of end times prophecy given by Isaiah, with the sun being brighter than it used to be and the moon being brighter. But I can still say, God, I just want this to be over. I know that we're in end times and I see the signs everywhere, and that should be strengthening my spirit and like, yeah, let's go. But me, the human side of me is like, just kill me, God, get this over with. But that's part of life, is that we're instruments and that God is bigger than us. And too bad. Too bad. You want this to just be over? Too bad. That's not God's will. It's not going to happen like that. But there's some strange irony there in the monotony and looking upon the world and being like, this place sucks. Nobody cares about you, God. This place is horrible. But at the same time, there's all these amazing might, power. God is showing his power to Elijah individually, and he still is just feeling like this. So anyways, I just connect with this ever since 2017, the Great Awakening. It's like, here we are years later, and I don't think anybody out there feels like it's over yet, like feels like it's just beginning. Anyways, not sure if people are picking up what I'm putting down, but maybe somebody is. Okay. Where's the small voice? That's where I was. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering in of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, "What doest thou here, Elijah?" And he said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children," and notice God is jealous. I think that it's that type of jealousy here. I think it'd be really easy if you didn't understand. There's a lot of people that try to erase, or they're like, people don't think that that's the way that God is. Of course God is jealous. He wants his people to worship him. Of course God's not going to like people going after idols. And I think that this is the exact same type of jealousy here, and the type of jealousy that I feel too, like, yes, I'm jealous, for God, the fact that people care more about sports teams. That it's a similar, like, jealous feeling that I want all of the other people to care about this thing as much as I do. And that I really don't like. I want it to be different, right? I don't know. It's just that type of jealousy where I want to take away people's passion for things that are stupid and replace it for the things that I care about, which is God, Jesus, and anyways. I have been very jealous of the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And just so interesting here how God is using this person who's a complete outcast, the last prophet. I mean, as far as he knows, I guess he seems to think he's the only prophet remaining. Does he not know about the 50 in one cave and the 50 in the other cave? And they're going to talk about 7,000 later in this chapter. So a lot of times we feel like we're alone, but we're not. It just interesting to me how he feels like this complete outcast. He just went out in the desert or in the wilderness for 40 days, is up on a mountain, and he's like, you're going to go anoint somebody to be king. To me, that's just so interesting. The way that there's these people, such big players, but they're like on the fringe. Almost reminds me of John the Baptist, where you have such an important figure who's just, what people would say, some crazy dude out in the middle of nowhere, but ends up being a big player. And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, so here comes Elisha. This is our first mention of Elisha, right? And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah. Whoa, what is that place? Abel is named after Abel. Abel Meholah. Abel Meholah. That is a strange place. Worth looking into this, I guess. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. Interesting. Are there other mentions of people being anointed as a prophet? And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Interesting. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees of which have not bowed unto Baal or Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So there was probably some sort of ceremony where they would kiss the statue, I would imagine. There are a lot of, this still happens in Catholic churches, where there will be statues that people kiss. That's idolatry. Okay, just a few more verses. So he departed thence and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. So I'm guessing that's a sign for if you were walking by somebody and take your mantle, which I'm assuming is some sort of cloak, and put it on him. Was that a sign for, hey, follow me? And, that would be a thing prophets would do, get people following them, I would imagine. Maybe he knew he was a prophet. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but that's just what I'm reading. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. So really interesting. Elijah's walking by, puts his cloak or his mantle on top of a field worker who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and then he takes that as a sign to follow him, I'm assuming, and Elijah's like, well, what are you doing? Go back. And so what Elisha decides to do is to perform a sacrifice, which with all of his took a yoke of oxen and slew them. I don't know how many oxens are in a yoke. I guess I could look that up. He had a lot of oxen. He took one of the 12. Interesting that it was 12 before him. That's a important symbolic number. Yeah, I guess that's something to look up. How many oxen in a yoke? He slew the oxen in one of his yokes, boiled their flesh. That's an interesting, mentioning boil there, just because a lot of times the sacrifices are like burnt, but then everything about the sacrifices is very mystifying to me. Just the way that it all worked, how it's almost like it was just a feast, really, and then the stuff that they would burn was mostly like the innards and the fat and stuff. Anyways, that is just a topic of research to get into, what actually was going on with the sacrifices. I do find it really interesting. I mean, people do make commentaries on how it's kind of silly that you're burning all like the innards, but then people are eating the meat. It's like they're eating the good part, and the stuff that they're giving to God is the stuff that they would have discarded anyways. Anyways, just interesting. A lot of questions about what was going on in the old times, but certainly they were very big on ceremony and signs and symbolism and doing symbolic gestures like this. So I'm guessing he was saying, I have to go kiss my mom and dad goodbye first before I follow you. And then when Elijah told him, well, go back, what did I do to you? Then he had this religious, symbolic sacrifice. I guess this is just his answer of, he's like answering the call, would be my guess. Turning from just a farmer to more religious duties at that moment. But I don't know. I'm just saying what's coming to mind as I read this. The next chapter is a lot longer than this one and has a lot of stuff going on, so we'll just have to see. And I'm interested in what you have to say. God bless everyone.